Hello, welcome back, my Royal Rogues. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Royal Rogue, and tonight we have a special episode preparing for the coronation tomorrow. I'd like to remind you that I will be live streaming the coronation, and to make sure you don't miss it, you can bookmark the link in the description of this video. That will be the link to my live stream, and just in case, make sure that you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell so you get the notification as soon as I go live. I will be going live at exactly 10 o'clock London time. But anyway, things can happen at the last minute, and I could go a bit later, or maybe I could improvise and go a bit earlier. So that's why I suggest you turn those notifications on. Now, to have an idea of what time would be everything, let's check tomorrow's schedule so we are sure we're on the same page. Here is the coronation timetable and your complete guide to the day, so let's check it out. Millions of people across the UK and beyond are preparing to celebrate the coronation of King Charles III, a symbolic ceremony combining a religious service and pageantry. It is being held at Westminster Abbey on 6 May, and the king, who will be crowned along with Camilla, the queen, will be the 40th reigning monarch, crowned since 1066. The day of splendor and formality will feature customs dating back more than 1,000 years. Here's how we expect it to unfold. The formal celebrations will begin with a procession from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Abbey. The procession will set off from Buckingham Palace at 10:20, moving along the Mall to Trafalgar Square, then down Whitehall and Parliament Street before turning into Parliament Square and Broad Sanctuary to reach the Great West Door of Westminster Abbey. In a break from tradition, King Charles and Queen Camilla will be in the Diamond Jubilee State Coach rather than the older, more uncomfortable Gold State Coach. You remember that the Gold State Coach has no suspension of any kind, and Queen Elizabeth II was 25-year-old back then, and even at that tender age, she found that short trip insufferable. No need to remind you the king and queen's ages, but it will be much better to go for the hydraulic suspension one. In this diagram, you can see the Diamond Jubilee State Coach built in 2012 in Australia to mark 60 years of Queen Elizabeth II's reign. And it even has air conditioning. Even with an aluminum frame, it weighs 3 tons, but I'm sure it's still a light ride. Then, Westminster Abbey arrival. The procession is expected to arrive at the Abbey shortly before 11 a.m., with the king likely to wear military uniform instead of the more traditional breeches and silk stockings worn by kings before him. King Charles will enter through the Great West Door and proceed through the nave until he reaches the central space in the Abbey. The ceremony is due to begin at 11 and will be punctuated with music selected by the king, with 12 newly commissioned pieces, including one by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and Greek Orthodox music in memory of the king's father, Prince Philip. The king's grandson, Prince George, will be among the pages at Westminster Abbey, alongside Camilla's grandchildren Lola, Eliza, Gus, Louis, and Freddie. Some of those taking part in the procession inside the Abbey will carry the regalia ahead of the king, with most items placed on the altar until needed in the ceremony. Now, what is a regalia? The UK is, according to the royal family website, the only European country that still uses regalia, the symbols of royalty like the crown, orb, and scepters in coronations. The individual objects symbolize different aspects of the service and responsibilities of the monarch. Charles will be presented with the sovereign's orb, the sovereign's scepter with a cross, and the sovereign's scepter with dove and other items at key moments in the ceremony. The king's orb and scepters, here it is, you can see it, made for Charles II in 1661 and used in coronations since. First, the sovereign's orb, which has a cross mounted on a globe symbolizing Christian world, and a hollow gold globe with band of precious gems and pearls. The scepter with cross represents kingly power and justice, made from gold and gem decorations, and it includes The Cullinan 1 or Star of Africa cut from world's largest diamond, added in 1910. That's what I call bling. And the scepter with dove, also called rod of equity and mercy, and represents the king's spiritual role. At the same time, Queen Camilla will be presented with the queen's rod with dove and the queen's scepter with a cross, mirroring the king's scepters. King Charles will be presented to the people, a tradition dating back to Anglo-Saxon times, standing beside his 700-year-old coronation chair. The king will turn to face the four sides of the abbey and be proclaimed the undoubted king before the congregation is asked to show their homage and service. Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, will make the first declaration, but for the first time, the subsequent declarations will be made by the Lady of the Garter and the Lady of the Thistle, representing the oldest orders of chivalry in England and Scotland, respectively, and a George Cross holder from the armed forces. The congregation will shout, "God save the King," and trumpets will sound after each recognition. And this is St. Edward's chair on the coronation, or the coronation chair, made in 1300s and used in coronations at Westminster Abbey. I found it interesting that it's got carved graffiti blamed on choir boys. That is nice. That gives it character. Once it was covered in gold leaf decoration, and the Stone of Destiny will be placed inside. The Archbishop will then administer the coronation oath, a legal requirement. He will ask King Charles to confirm that he will uphold the law and the Church of England during his reign, and the king will place his hand on the Holy Gospel and pledge to perform and keep those promises. The king will also take a second oath, the Accession Declaration Oath, stating that he is a faithful Protestant. The king's ceremonial robe will be removed and he will sit in the coronation chair to be anointed, emphasizing the spiritual status of the sovereign, who is also the head of the Church of England. The archbishop will pour special oil from the ampulla, a gold flask, onto the coronation spoon before anointing the king in the form of a cross on his head, breast, and hands. The ampulla was made for Charles II's coronation, but its shape harks back to an earlier version and a legend that the Virgin Mary appeared to St. Thomas A. Becket in the 12th century and gave him a golden eagle, from which future kings of England will be anointed. The coronation spoon is much older, having survived Oliver Cromwell's destruction of the regalia after the English Civil War. And then, the moment of truth, literally the crowning moment, when the king will wear St. Edward's crown for the only time in his life. The crown is named after a much earlier version made for the Anglo-Saxon king and St. Edward the Confessor, and said to have been used at coronations after 1220 until Cromwell had it melted down. It was made for King Charles II, who wanted a crown similar to the one worn by Edward, but even grander. I didn't know this, but this crown is only worn when the monarch is crowned, and never again. First, the king will be given a shimmering golden coat to wear called the super tunica and be presented with items including the sovereign's orb, the coronation ring, the sovereign's scepter with cross, and the sovereign's scepter with dove. Then the archbishop will place St. Edward's crown on the king's head, and the abbey bells will ring for 2 minutes. Trumpets will sound and gun salutes will be fired across the UK. A 62-round salute will be fired at the Tower of London, with a 6-gun salvo at Horse Guards Parade. 21 rounds will be fired at a further 11 locations around the UK, including Edinburgh, Cardiff, and Belfast, and deployed Royal Navy ships. The final part of the ceremony will see the king take the throne. He may even be lifted into it by the archbishop, bishops, and other peers of the kingdom. Traditionally, a succession of royals and peers will then have paid homage by kneeling before the new king, swearing allegiance and kissing his right hand. However, Prince William will be the only royal duke to kneel and pay homage to King Charles. And instead of peers, for the first time, the archbishop will invite people in the abbey and those watching and listening at home to pledge allegiance in what is called a new and significant moment in the tradition of the coronation by organizers. After the homage, Queen Camilla will be anointed, crowned, and enthroned in a simpler ceremony, although she will not have to take an oath. She will be crowned with Queen Mary's crown, originally made for Queen Mary's coronation alongside George V, but it is being modified to remove some of the arches and reset with the Cullinan 3, 4, and 5 diamonds. And well, the king and queen will then return to Buckingham Palace along the reverse of the route by which they came, this time traveling the 260-year-old gold state coach that has been used in every coronation since William IV. Nobody escapes the gold state coach. Finally, the Buckingham Palace fly pass. It has become customary since the coronation of Edward VII in 1902 for the new monarch to greet the crowds in the mall from the Buckingham Palace balcony. The Queen was joined by her mother, children, and sister, among other royals, as she watched a fly past involving hundreds of planes in 1953. Buckingham Palace has confirmed that King Charles and Queen Camilla will continue the tradition. Those there will witness the end of the day's public celebrations at 14:30 with a 6-minute fly past involving members of the Army, Royal Navy, and Royal Air Force, and culminating in a display by the Red Arrows. So, my Royal Rogues, we're all set for tomorrow. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to receive my notifications. It also helps if you like this video. Remember the two most important words: much love and bliss.